Picture this, a man so devoted to his children that the entire town has written him off as unmarriageable. 5 kids, 1 bedroom, and countless judgmental whispers. But what happens when the new schoolteacher, labeled a spinster by the same gossiping tongues, sees past the chaos to something extraordinary? This is the story of love found where no one expected it, and proof that families aren't always built the way we think they should be. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Mike Harrison stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing yesterday's lasagna pan, while the morning sun painted golden squares across the linoleum floor. His flannel sleeves were rolled up past his elbows, revealing forearms marked with small scars from years of hardware store work and childhood accidents. The house hummed with its usual morning symphony, Emma's alarm clock buzzing for the 3rd time, Josh arguing with Danny over the last of the cereal, and 4-year-old Sophie singing some made-up tune about purple elephants from her booster seat. At the table, "Dad, I can't find my science project." Lily's voice carried down from upstairs, pitched high with panic. Mike dried his hands on a dish towel that had seen better days, probably 4 kids ago, and took the stairs 2 at a time. He found his 8-year-old daughter standing in the middle of her shared bedroom, school uniform half-buttoned, hair sticking up at angles that defied gravity. "Check under Emma's bed," he said calmly, already moving toward the bunk beds where Danny's dinosaur posters competed for wall space with Josh's soccer pennants. "Remember you were working on it in here last night while Sophie was coloring?" Lily dove under the bottom bunk and emerged triumphant, holding a poster board covered in hand-drawn diagrams of the water cycle. "Found it!" She threw her arms around Mike's waist in a quick hug before racing to the bathroom. "Thanks, Dad." Back downstairs, Mike found Josh attempting to braid Sophie's fine blonde hair while simultaneous eating toast and watching the morning news. The braid looked more like a twisted pretzel, but Sophie was giggling, clutch her favorite stuffed raccoon named Mr. Buttons. Emma, already dressed and organized as always, was packing lunches with the efficiency of someone who'd been doing it since she was 10. "Let me get that, Em," Mike said, taking over the sandwich assembly line. "You've got that early band practice, right?" "I got it, Dad. You need to get ready for work." Emma's voice carried the gentle patience of an eldest child who'd grown up too fast. "Besides, you always put too much peanut butter on Danny's sandwich, and he complains about it getting stuck to the roof of his mouth." Mike watched his daughter work, noting how she effortlessly managed what most adults would find overwhelming. Since Marie had died 3 years ago in the car accident, Emma had stepped into roles no 12-year-old should have to fill. The guilt twisted in his chest, but he'd learned to live with it, like learning to live with a missing limb. 20 minutes later, the organized chaos reached its crescendo. Backpacks were shouldered, lunchboxes were grabbed, and 5 kids lined up by the front door for their daily inspection. Mike moved down the line, checking that shoelaces were tied, jackets were zipped, and homework folders were properly tucked away. When he reached Sophie, she wrapped herself around his leg like a tiny koala. "Don't want to go to preschool," she mumbled into his jeans. "Want to stay with Daddy." Mike crouched down, eye level with his youngest. "But Mrs. Patterson has story time today, remember? And finger painting. You love finger painting. Will you pick me up?" "Emma's picking you. Up today. I have to work late at the store." He kissed her forehead. "But I'll be home for dinner, and we'll read stories together, okay?" The walk to school was a familiar dance. Mike held Sophie's hand while the older kids scattered ahead like leaves in autumn wind, meeting friends at various corners and peeling off toward different buildings. Cedar Falls wasn't large enough for multiple schools, but the elementary, middle, and high school buildings formed a campus of sorts around the old town green. After depositing Sophie at Little Bud's preschool, Mike headed toward Pine Street Elementary. He'd started walking the kids to school after Marie died, partly because his truck had mechanical issues they couldn't afford to fix, but mostly because these 15 minutes each morning and afternoon were sometimes the only moments he got to really see his children. In between, he worked 10-hour shifts at Miller's Hardware, came home to dinner prep, homework help, bedtime stories and laundry that seemed to multiply overnight. As he approached the elementary school, Mike noticed an unfamiliar figure standing by the front steps. A woman in her 30s, wearing a long charcoal coat and carrying a worn leather satchel, was studying a piece of paper while scanning the building numbers. Her reddish-brown hair was twisted into a neat bun, and she had the kind of posture that suggested both confidence and uncertainty. "Excuse me," Mike called out as he passed. "You looking for something specific?" The woman turned, and he caught sight of intelligent green eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Oh, thank you. I'm trying to find the main office. I'm starting today as the new 5th grade teacher, but I'm beginning to think my directions were written by someone with a very different idea of North." Mike chuckled, the first genuine laugh he'd had in weeks. "Trust me, Cedar Falls isn't big enough to get lost in, but the building numbers here make no sense. Main office is actually around the corner through that archway. First door on your left. Can't miss it. There's usually a line of mildly panicked parents at this hour." "Perfect. Thank you so much." She extended her hand. "I'm Elizabeth Carter. Liz, actually. Mike Harrison. And you're not wrong about the parents, though most of them are dealing with forgotten lunchboxes rather than architectural confusion." He shook her hand, noting the firm grip and the faint smell of lavender soap. "Do you work here?" "God, no. I just walk my herd through daily. 5 kids, 5 different drop-off times, 5 different variations of 'I forgot my insert crucial item here.'" The words came out before he could stop them, and he immediately regretted sharing. Most people's faces changed when they learned about the 5 kids, especially when they realized there was no Mrs. Harrison in the picture, but Liz's expression remained genuinely interested. 5? That's impressive. They all old enough for school? Almost. Sophie's still in preschool, but the other 4 are here somewhere, probably terrorizing various teachers as we speak. Mike glanced at his watch. "Speaking of which, I should get going. Don't want to be late to work. Welcome to Cedar Falls, Liz, and good luck today." "Thank you, Mike. Maybe I'll see you around." Mike continued his walk to Miller's Hardware, but found his thoughts lingering on the encounter. There had been something different about the way Liz looked at him when he mentioned his 5 kids. No pity, no judgment, no barely concealed calculation. But how exhausting he must be. Just acceptance. It was refreshing. The hardware store was already bustling when he arrived. Tom Bradley, the owner and Mike's closest thing to a best friend, was helping Mrs. Rodriguez pick out paint colors for her bathroom renovation. Mike tied on his apron and immediately got pulled into the morning rush of contractors and homeowners, stocking up for weekend projects. "Harrison!" Tom called out during a brief lull around 10. "Got a delivery coming in at 3. Can you handle it? I've got to run to the bank." "Sure thing." Mike was reorganizing the plumbing section when he heard the familiar chorus of whispers from aisle 3. Cedar Falls was small enough that the same conversations happened in different corners of town with predictable regularity. 5 kids at his age, Mrs. Rogers was saying to her shopping companion. And Lord knows he can't afford a babysitter on hardware store wages. Those poor children. "Someone needs to do something," the other woman agreed. "But who's going to take on a ready-made family? Especially with that little one still in diapers." Mike had perfected the art of selective hearing over the past 3 years. He continued stacking PVC pipes, letting the words wash over him like background noise. These women meant well in their way. Cedar Falls was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone's business and people genuinely worried about their neighbors. The problem was that their solutions always involved finding him a wife, as if that was the only possible answer to single parenthood. The lunch rush brought its own challenges. Mike grabbed a quick sandwich in the break room while fielding a call from the school nurse. Josh had slipped during recess and needed ice for his wrist. Nothing serious, but could someone pick him up and take him home early? "I can't leave until 6, Mike told her, calculating the impossibility of the request. "My daughter Emma gets out at 3:30. Can he wait in the nurse's office until then?" The arrangement worked barely. Emma would collect Josh and all the other kids, get them home, start dinner prep, and supervise homework until Mike returned. It was a well-oiled machine born of necessity, but Mike knew it wasn't sustainable forever. Emma was carrying too much responsibility, but the alternative, quitting his job to be home more, would mean losing the house. When he finally locked up the hardware store that evening, darkness had already settled over Cedar Falls like a familiar blanket. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The October air carried the scent of wood smoke and dying leaves, and Mike's breath clouded in small puffs as he hurried home. Street lamps cast pools of yellow light on the sidewalk, and he could see warm glows in windows as families settled into their evening routines. His own house stood out with its chaotic illumination. Lights blazed from every window, and he could hear muffled shouting even from the sidewalk. Mike quickened his pace, key already in hand. The scene that greeted him was both familiar and exhausting. Josh sat at the kitchen table with an ice pack on his wrist, while Lily and Danny argued loudly about whose turn it was to set the table. Sophie was crying in her high chair, mac and cheese decorating not just her face, but seemingly every surface within a 3-foot radius. Emma stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled like burned cheese, her face flushed with stress and frustration. "I said you clean up your crayons first," Danny was shouting at Lily. "They're not even mine. Those are Sophie's." "Hey!" Mike's voice cut through the chaos. 5 heads turned toward him. "Take it down about 6 notches, please." Danny immediately pointed at Lily. "She's being mean." "Lily, table's your job tonight. Danny, you're on dishes, no arguing." Mike moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, checking Josh's wrist first, then scooping Sophie out of her high chair for cleaning duty. "How was your day, Em? Besides having to leave class early for nurse duty?" "Fine," Emma said, but her voice carried that teenage flatness that meant actually terrible, but I don't want to talk about it. "Dinner's almost ready." "It smells great." It didn't, but Mike had learned that enthusiasm was often more important than accuracy with his kids. "Thanks for handling everything." The next hour passed in a blur of homework supervision, bath negotiations, and the ongoing mystery of where. Sophie put her shoes. Mike refereed disputes about screen time, helped Josh with his algebra, listened to Lily practice violin scales that made the dogs next door howl, and somehow managed to get everyone fed, washed, and into various stages of pajamas. By 8 o'clock, Sophie was asleep, curled around Mr. Buttons with one thumb firmly in her mouth. The older kids were supposedly doing homework, though Mike could hear muffled giggling from the girls' room and what sounded suspiciously like a basketball being bounced in the boys' room upstairs. He was loading the dishwasher when Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Dad, can we talk?" The tone made Mike's parental radar ping. "Of course, what's up?" Emma fidgeted with the hem of her pajama top, a habit she'd developed when discussing difficult topics. "Some kids at school today, they were talking about our family again." Mike's jaw tightened. "What kind of talking?" "Just, about how you're raising us alone, and how it's weird that you don't date, and how we're different from other families." She rushed through the words like ripping off a band-aid. And then there's this new teacher, Miss Carter, and everyone's saying she's too old to ever get married. And I heard Mrs. Rogers telling someone in the grocery store that maybe two unmarriageables would be perfect for each other. And I just wanted you to know that I don't care what people say, and you're doing great, and we don't need anyone else. But also, she trailed off, looking miserable. Mike set down the plate he'd been holding and really looked at his daughter. When had she gotten old enough to carry the weight of town gossip? When had she started defending their family dynamic to classmates who probably went home to two-parent households with picket fences and family game nights? "Come here," he said simply. Emma crossed to him and leaned into a hug she probably thought she was too old for. "First off, thank you for defending us, but you know what? You're 12. You shouldn't have to." "I don't mind." "I know you don't mind. That's part of the problem." Mike sighed, breathing in the simple scent of children's shampoo and laundry detergent. "I'm sorry people talk. I'm sorry they make you feel like our family isn't good enough just because it looks different." "It's not that we're not good enough," Emma said firmly. "We're just not what they expect. But Dad, you work so hard and you do everything for us, and maybe it would be nice if you had someone who could help sometimes." Mike pulled back to look at his daughter's face. "Are you matchmaking me with the new 5th grade teacher?" Emma's cheeks flushed. "Maybe a little. I've heard she's really nice, and she teaches Lily's class now, and Danny said she brought homemade cookies on the first day." "Homemade cookies, huh? Well, that's certainly promising credentials for stepmotherhood." "Dad, I'm serious." But Emma was smiling now. "You never go anywhere without us. You never do anything just for you, and I know you miss Mom, and nothing can replace her," but the words hung in the air between them, loaded with years of unspoken understanding. Mike knew Emma was right on multiple levels. He did miss Marie terribly, but somewhere along the way, that missing had transformed into a kind of sanctuary. If he stayed devoted to her memory, if he channeled everything into being both parents for their children, then he never had to risk loving and losing again. "Tell you what," he said finally. "If I happen to run into Miss Carter again, I'll try to have an actual conversation that doesn't involve forgotten homework or architectural confusion." "Really?" "Really. But no pressure, okay? And definitely no coaching from the peanut gallery upstairs." Emma hugged him again, quickly, then disappeared toward the stairs. "Deal. Good night, Dad." Mike finished the dishes in thoughtful silence. Outside, Cedar Falls was settling into its evening rhythm. He could hear the distant sound of dogs barking, someone's television playing too loud, the rumble of late-night traffic on Main Street. Normal sounds in a normal town where normal families lived normal lives. But as he climbed the stairs to check on his kids one final time, Mike wondered if maybe normal was overrated. Sure, they were different. Sure, it was hard. But there was something beautiful in the controlled chaos, something precious in how his children had pulled together. After losing their mother, Josh was sprawled across his bed with a math book still open on his chest. Mike removed the book and pulled the covers up, noting the way his son had grown since last summer. Lily and Emma were both reading in their beds, lost in different worlds, their bedside lamps creating small pools of warm light. He kissed each of them goodnight, received drowsy mumbles in return. Sophie's room was last. His youngest slept like she did everything else, with complete commitment and utter chaos. Somehow, she'd managed to twist herself perpendicular to the bed, sheets tangled around one leg, Mr. Buttons abandoned on the floor. Mike gently repositioned her and tucked the covers snug, then sat for a moment in the rocking chair that had been Marie's. This was the hardest time of day, when the house finally quieted and he had too many minutes alone with his thoughts. Marie should have been here to see Sophie's day at preschool, to help Lily with her violin practice, to talk Emma through the social minefield of middle school. She should have been here to share the load, to laugh at the daily disasters, to balance his sometimes too serious parenting with her lighter touch. But she wasn't. And tomorrow would bring another day of managing 5 schedules, 5 personalities, 5 sets of needs that all somehow had to fit into the same 24 hours as his job, the housework, and the faint hope of keeping everyone, not just alive, but actually thriving. Mike stood and kissed Sophie's forehead one last time. Outside her window, Cedar Falls was mostly dark now, with just the occasional porch light marking the presence of other families, other lives being lived. Somewhere in one of those houses, Liz Carter was probably settling into her new place, preparing lesson plans for tomorrow's 5th graders, including his Lily. As he turned off Sophie's light and headed to his own room, Mike found himself thinking about Emma's words again. Maybe it would be nice to have someone who could help sometimes. The thought wasn't as terrifying as it once might have been. Maybe Cedar Falls busybodies were right about one thing. Sometimes the most unexpected combinations ended up making the most sense. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that made everything feel possible. Mike Harrison's alarm went off at 5:45, same as always, and he shuffled through his morning routine in the semi-darkness to avoid waking the household too early. Coffee first, always coffee. Then a quick check of the weather app to determine if they were in jacket territory or full winter coats. The shower was lukewarm. Someone had used up the hot water last night, probably during Lily's endless violin practice-induced bath soak, but Mike had grown accustomed to these small sacrifices. He dressed in jeans and a grey Henley, pausing briefly to consider the growing hole at the elbow before deciding it wasn't worth the effort to change. By 6:30, the morning symphony had begun. Alarms buzzed, feet thundered down hallways, and the bathroom became a source of constant negotiation. "Dad, Josh is hogging the sink. I was here first. Sophie needs help with buttons." Each voice layered over the others until Mike felt like a conductor of chaos, directing traffic with a coffee mug in one hand and a breakfast plate in the other. Can you help your sister with her backpack while I make lunches?" He moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, assembly line style. 5 sandwiches. Peanut butter for Danny and Sophie, turkey for Lily and Josh. Emma preferred hummus and vegetables. He'd learned these preferences through trial and error, countless tears over the wrong lunch, and many sticky notes on the refrigerator. "Dad, I can't find my science book," Lily called from the living room, her voice carrying that early morning panic all kids seem to master. "Check the dining table. You were doing homework there last night." The book was indeed on the dining table, buried under Danny's Pokemon cards and Sophie's latest artistic endeavor, a crayon masterpiece featuring what appeared to be a dinosaur riding a rainbow. Mike folded the artwork carefully and stuck it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a slice of pizza. 5 minutes, he announced, the morning's unofficial rally cry. Bodies moved faster now. Shoelaces were tied, jackets were grabbed, homework folders were double-checked. Emma, efficient as always, had somehow managed to braid Sophie's hair into something resembling neatness, while simultaneously eating yogurt and reviewing her own homework. The walk to school was different this morning. October had painted Cedar Falls in shades of amber and burgundy, and the sidewalks were carpeted with leaves that crunched satisfyingly under their feet. Sophie held his hand and chattered about her upcoming play date with a girl named Mia from preschool, while the older kids split off in their various directions, meeting friends at corners and disappearing into the morning crowd. After depositing Sophie at Little Bud's, she went willingly today, excited to show Mrs. Patterson a rock she'd found that was definitely magical. Mike found himself approaching Pine Street Elementary with more awareness than usual. The conversation with Emma the night before had planted a seed in his mind, and he caught himself looking for a familiar figure in a charcoal coat. She was there, standing near the main entrance, but this time she wasn't consulting a map. Liz Carter stood with a coffee cup in one hand and a box of what appeared to be homemade cookies in the other, chatting easily with a group of students who had gathered around her. Mike could see Lily in the group, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she explained something with animated hand gestures. As he approached, he heard fragments of conversation. And that's why the water cycle is so important. Miss Carter, did you really make these yourself? Can you believe the rain yesterday? Liz noticed him first, her face brightening with recognition. Good morning, Mike. I was hoping I'd run into you again. Morning, he replied, pleased that she'd remembered his name. I see you've been inducted into the Cedar Falls Cookie Expectation Protocol. She laughed, a genuine sound that made the gray morning feel warmer. Is that what this is? I thought I was just being friendly, but I've had about 15 kids tell me how their previous teacher always brought treats on Tuesdays. Mrs. Henderson spoiled them. She was here for 30 years before retiring. Tough act to follow. I'm learning that the hard way. Liz glanced down at the box. Though if cookies are the price of admission, I can handle that. Lily looked up from where she'd been examining the treats. Dad, Miss Carter made chocolate chip and snickerdoodles. She asked what we liked yesterday. That was very thoughtful of her, Mike said, noticing how his daughter's eyes practically glowed with excitement. It had been a while since he'd seen Lily this enthusiastic about school. Actually, Liz said, I wanted to mention something. Lily mentioned yesterday that she plays violin, and I run a small music club after school on Thursdays. Nothing formal, just kids who want to play together. She seemed interested, but I thought I should check with you first. Mike hesitated. After-school activities meant someone needed to collect Sophie earlier, which meant calling Emma away from her own activities, which meant restructuring the entire afternoon routine that kept their household functioning. But Lily was staring up at him with such hopeful eyes. What time would it end? 4 o'clock. We meet in the music room, and it's just an hour once a week. Completely optional, of course. Lily tugged on his sleeve. Please, Dad? Jessica from my class is in it, and she says they get to play duets and everything. The bell rang, saving Mike from an immediate decision. Students began flowing toward the building entrance, and the adults stepped aside to let them pass. Can I think about it? Mike asked, feeling like the worst parent in the world for not immediately saying yes to something that clearly excited his daughter. Of course, Liz said, but her response was cut short by Principal Miller's voice over the intercom, calling, all staff inside for morning announcements. I should go, she said quickly. Nice to see you again. And Lily, don't forget we're starting our leaves unit today. Lily bounced off toward her classroom, already chattering with friends about the cookies and the music club. Mike watched Liz hurry through the doors, noting how she stopped to hold it open for a kindergartner struggling with an oversized backpack. The walk to Miller's Hardware gave him time to think. Music club. Such a simple thing, but in their world, nothing was simple. Every yes to one child meant 1,000 micro-adjustments for everyone else. Every activity meant someone had to step up, step in, or step aside. The guilt was always there. The constant calculation of fair time and fair attention spread across 5 kids with different needs and different dreams. Tom was already at the store when Mike arrived, unloading a delivery of spring cleaning supplies. That seemed optimistic given the October chill. Morning, Tom called out. How goes the Harrison Home for Wayward Children? Same as always. Controlled chaos with occasional moments of actual chaos. Mike grabbed a dolly and started helping with boxes. Hey, can I ask you something? Shoot. Your kids do after-school stuff, right? How do you make it work? Tom paused mid-lift. Well, Kelly handles most of it since she works from home. Why? Music club, Thursday afternoons. Lily wants to join. What's the problem? That's great. Mike set down a box of cleaning supplies. The problem is, Sophie gets out of preschool at 3:30, and Emma usually picks her up on her way home from school. But if Emma has to come back to collect Lily, At 4, that's an extra hour of managing a 4-year-old while trying to do homework. Tom nodded slowly. Right, the logistics. Everything's logistics. Mike grabbed another box. Sometimes I think I spend more time planning our schedule than actually living it. You know, Tom said carefully, there are other parents who could help out. Carpools, play dates, that sort of thing. Mike had heard this before. Cedar Falls ran on reciprocal favors. I'll pick up your kids if you get mine next week. But Mike had learned to be careful about accepting help. Too many people in this town saw helping the Harrison family as a gateway to fixing the Harrison family, and fixing meant finding him a wife. I'll figure something out, he said, which was his standard response to most logistical challenges. The morning passed in a familiar blur of customers, inventory, and small repairs. Mike had developed a reputation as the go-to guy for the impossible. Fixes, the doorknob that never quite lined up right, the window that stuck in humidity, the stubborn toilet that ran at precisely 3 a.m. every night. People came to Miller's specifically for his expertise, and Tom had learned to funnel the challenging repairs directly to him. Around 11, Mrs. Rogers appeared, ostensibly shopping for plant food, but clearly on a mission. Mike tried to duck behind the paint display, but her radar was too sharp. Michael Harrison, just the man I wanted to see. Morning, Mrs. Rogers. What can I help you with today? Well, I was talking to Janet Miller at the post office, and she mentioned the new teacher has been making quite an impression. Very organized, very dedicated, and she has such a lovely way with the children. Mike grabbed a random box of plant food and pretended to examine the label. That's nice to hear. Yes, well, I couldn't help but notice she's taken a special interest in your Lily. Something about a music club. Cedar Falls Gossip Network was more efficient than any modern communication system. Lily mentioned it. You know, it's wonderful. When adults take extra time with children, shows real character. And from what I hear, Miss Carter is very capable, very independent. The kind of woman who can handle responsibility. Mike recognized the direction this conversation was heading. I'm sure she's a fine teacher. Oh, more than fine. Did you know she's got a master's degree? From a real university, not one of those online things? And she's new to Cedar Falls, doesn't have any attachments yet. I really should get back to work, Mrs. Rogers. The plant food is right here in aisle 5 if you need anything else. But Mrs. Rogers wasn't finished. You know, the ladies. Auxiliary is having their fall potluck next Sunday after church. Perfect opportunity for folks to get to know each other better. I'm sure Miss Carter would appreciate a friendly invitation, especially from someone whose daughter is in her class. The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. Mike had successfully avoided church functions since Marie's death, using the kids' schedules as a convenient excuse. But now, with Lily's potential music club participation and Mrs. Rogers' not-so-subtle matchmaking, he felt the walls of his carefully constructed routine starting to shift. I'll think about it, he said, his standard deflection. That's all I ask. Mrs. Rogers patted his arm with maternal authority. Those children of yours need stability, and you need, well, a break wouldn't hurt anyone. After she left, Mike found Tom grinning at him from behind the counter. The Rogers matchmaking service strikes again. Don't you start. I'm not starting anything, but consider this. The woman made homemade cookies for 5th graders on her 2nd day. That's either desperation or dedication, or just being a decent teacher, or that. Tom handed him a delivery slip. Speaking of decent, Mr. Johnson called about his garage door again. 3rd time this month. Think you can head over there around 2? The rest of the morning flew by in a procession of installations, consultations, and customer service disasters. Mike fixed Mrs. Patterson's running toilet. The float valve was stuck. Helped old Mr. Hendricks pick out weather stripping for his drafty windows, and talked a first-time homeowner through the basics. of changing a ceiling fan without electrocuting himself. Lunch was 15 minutes in the break room, with yesterday's leftover lasagna and a text conversation with Emma about afternoon pickup logistics. Finally, he managed to work out a compromise. He'd pick up Sophie early from preschool and bring her to the hardware store for the last hour of his shift if Emma could handle getting herself and Lily home on Thursday. At 2 p.m., Mike headed out to Johnson's Auto Repair to tackle the allegedly haunted garage door. He'd developed a theory that the problem wasn't mechanical, but electrical, probably a temperature-sensitive connection that acted up when the weather changed. 30 minutes of investigation proved him right, and he was rewiring the sensor when he heard a familiar voice. "Mike, is that you under there?" He rolled out from beneath the door mechanism to find Liz standing beside a sensible sedan. "With a flat tire. Miss Carter. Car trouble." "Just Elizabeth. And yes, apparently my car decided to explore its artistic side during my lunch break." She gestured ruefully at the deflated passenger tire. "I don't suppose garage door repair extends to tire changing." Mike pulled off his work gloves and examined the tire. "Looks like you picked up a nail, but I can handle it." "You don't have to. It's no trouble. Part of the full-service Cedar Falls experience." He retrieved his tools and got to work, aware that she was watching with what appeared to be genuine interest rather than the helpless female routine some women affected around car problems. "I talked to Lily more about music club today," she said after a moment. "She's really quite talented. Has she been playing long?" 3 years her mother started her lessons. The words came out automatically, but Mike noticed how naturally he'd mentioned Marie without the usual stab of pain. She mentioned that her mum passed away. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." Mike focused on the jack placement, grateful for the distraction. Of mechanical work, Lily looks a lot like her. She has your determination, though. When she gets stuck on a fingering, she doesn't give up. Just keeps trying until she gets it right. The comment caught him off guard. How had this woman, who'd known his daughter for 2 days, already noticed something so specific about her personality? That's very observant of you. It's my job to notice things about my students, and Lily, she's special. There's something about the way she approaches challenges that reminds me of myself at that age. Mike looked up from the tire. "Were you a stubborn 8-year-old? "The stubbornest. My parents used to joke that I'd argue with a brick wall if I thought it was wrong." She smiled, and Mike caught a glimpse of what that stubborn little girl might have looked like. "Actually, I solved the Thursday pickup issue myself, if you're interested." "How's that?" "I can drive Lily home afterward. It's right on my way, and frankly, I need to familiarize myself with the neighborhoods anyway. Get to know Cedar Falls better." Mike paused in his work. Another offer of help, but this one felt different. Less like charity and more like practicality. "Are you sure that's above and beyond teacher duties?" "Is it? I don't have anywhere else to be, and it would mean Lily could participate without creating family logistics drama. Win-win." She had a point, and more importantly, she'd framed it as a mutual benefit rather than as help for the poor widowed father. That distinction mattered more than Mike had realized. "All right," he said. "If you're sure, I'll let Emma know she's off the hook for Thursday pickups." "Perfect." Elizabeth clapped her hands together, looking genuinely pleased. "I should warn you, though, I have every intention of bribing your children with more baked goods. It's my main teaching strategy." "Bribery is an underrated parenting technique," Mike agreed, lowering the car with the jack. "There you go, good as new." "Thank you so much. What do I owe you?" "Nothing. Consider it the Cedar Falls Welcome Committee. Is that the same committee that provides architectural tours and cookie-based intelligence gathering?" "That would be the one. We're very comprehensive in our services." They stood there for a moment, an oddly comfortable silence settling between them. Mike found himself noticing things. how she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way her laugh lines suggested someone who smiled frequently, the small scar on her chin that looked like a childhood souvenir. "I should let you get back to your garage door," Elizabeth said finally, "and I have about 30 parent permission slips to file before the day ends." "Right, and I have a temperature-sensitive motion sensor to outsmart." "Good luck with that. And Mike, thank you for the tire and for agreeing to the music club thing. I know it's complicated with all your," she gestured vaguely, "logistics." He watched her drive away, noting how carefully she checked her blind spot and how she waved to the crosswalk guard even though no students were visible. Small details, but telling ones. Emma's words echoed in his head. Maybe two unmarriageables would be perfect for each other. The rest of his shift felt different somehow. Mike found himself whistling while he finished the garage door repair, looking forward to the evening routine more than dreading it. When 6 o'clock finally came, he practically jogged home, taking a shortcut through Maple Park, where October had turned the trees into a corridor of flame-colored light. The house greeted him with its usual chaos, but tonight he noticed other things too. Josh was helping Danny with his spelling homework, their heads bent together over the kitchen table. Emma had started dinner, soup and grilled cheese, judging by the smell, and was simultaneously fielding questions from Sophie about why clouds weren't purple. "Dad's home," Lily announced from the living room where she was practicing violin. The notes were slow and careful, working through a particularly challenging passage. "Sounds good, Lil," he called back. "Guess what? You're officially in music club." The music stopped abruptly, followed by the sound of running feet. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, bow still in hand, eyes wide with delight. "Really? Really? Miss Carter offered to drive you home afterward, so it all works out." "She did. That's so nice." Lily practically bounced with excitement. "Wait until I tell Jessica tomorrow." Emma looked up from the stovetop. "Miss Carter, huh? The mysterious new teacher everyone's talking about? How do you know about that? You don't even have her for class." "Cedar Falls, Dad. Information travels faster than gossip, and gossip travels at light speed." Emma stirred the soup with a knowing smile. "I heard she helped you with a flat tire today." "How did you? Never mind." "Yes, I helped her change a tire. It's called being neighborly." Emma's expression suggested she wasn't buying the casual explanation, but she let it drop. "Dinner's almost ready. Can you get Sophie washed up?" The evening unfolded in its familiar rhythm, but with an undercurrent of something new. During dinner, Lily chattered non-stop about school, music club, and how Miss Carter promised to teach them about harmony. Danny contributed his own tale of playground drama involving a disputed tetherball victory. Josh, nursing a slightly sprained wrist from yesterday's slip, described his science teacher's dramatic demonstration of chemical reactions. Sophie, meanwhile, had discovered that she could make different sounds by tapping her spoon against various dishes, creating a percussion accompaniment to dinner conversation. Usually, Mike would redirect this behavior, but tonight he found himself letting it slide. The improvised music felt appropriate somehow, like a tiny celebration of the day's small victories. After dinner, homework time brought its usual challenges. Josh needed help with algebra that tested the limits of Mike's high school math memories. Lily practiced her violin scales, each repetition more confident than the last. Danny struggled through a book report with the concentration of someone defusing a bomb. Emma, efficient as always, had finished her assignments during a study hall but stayed nearby to help her siblings. Bath time was negotiations and compromises. Sophie insisted on wearing her favorite dinosaur pajamas, even though they were in the wash, requiring emergency backup dinosaur pajamas from the bottom of the drawer. Danny and Josh turned teeth brushing into a competition, complete with sound effects that echoed off the bathroom walls. By 8:30, Sophie was asleep, and the older kids were in their rooms for quiet time. Mike found Emma in the kitchen, making herself a cup of tea. Big day tomorrow? He asked, noting her slightly worried expression. Math test, I'm fine, just reviewing. She added honey to her tea with careful precision. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about... She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. What it would be like if things were different. If Mom hadn't died. The question landed heavily, but not painfully. They'd talked about Marie before, but usually in past tense, in memories and stories. This was different, hypothetical and somehow more complex. All the time, Mike said honestly, but not in the way you might think. What do you mean? He poured himself coffee, cold from this morning, but somehow still necessary. I used to spend a lot of time imagining alternate timelines. What if she'd taken a different route home that day? What if the other driver had left 5 minutes later? What if we'd decided to move to a neighborhood closer to the school? He sat down across from his daughter, but all those what-ifs just led to the same painful place. Eventually, I had to focus on what now? Emma nodded slowly. Sometimes. I dream she's still here. Not dramatic dreams or anything, just regular life, her making pancakes or yelling at Josh to clean his room or helping me pick out clothes for school. And when I wake up, it's like losing her all over again. Mike reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I know that feeling, but you know what I've figured out? Those dreams aren't about what we lost. They're about what we remember. All the good stuff gets to stay with us. Miss Carter said something today that made me think, Emma continued. She was talking about how families come in all shapes and sizes, and how sometimes the best families are the ones we choose, not just the ones we're born into. She said that in class. No, I overheard her talking to another teacher, but it made sense, you know. We've chosen to be a family every day since Mom died. We keep choosing each other. The wisdom of his 12-year-old daughter sometimes caught Mike off guard. When had she become so thoughtful, so aware of the complex underpinnings of their life? We have, he agreed, and we'll keep choosing each other no matter what. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Emma stood to go upstairs. For what it's worth, she said at the doorway, I like Miss Carter. She seems real, you know? Not like the other teachers who talk to us like we're just kids. She talks to us like we're people who happen to be young. After Emma left, Mike wandered through the downstairs, straightening cushions and picking up stray socks. In the living room, he noticed Lily's music folder on the piano bench and flipped through it absently. Her teacher had written encouraging notes in the margins. Beautiful tone. Remember to count. You've improved so much. Marie had always been the one to attend parent-teacher conferences, to stay on top of school communications, to know the social dynamics of each child's classroom. Mike had tried to fill that role, but he often felt like an understudy who'd been thrown on stage without enough rehearsal. Maybe that's why Elizabeth's offer to help with music club had affected him. More than it should. It wasn't just about solving a logistical problem. It was about someone else seeing his children's potential, someone else investing in their growth, someone else choosing to be part of their extended community. His phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Heads up. Mrs. Rogers cornered Kelly at the grocery store. Apparently your tire-changing heroics have elevated you to prime matchmaking territory. Mike shook his head, smiling despite himself. Cedar Falls was nothing if not predictable. He typed back, "Tell Kelly the rumors of my romantic rescue are greatly exaggerated." Tom's response came immediately. Too late. Kelly's already planning. Double dates in her head. Mike shut off his phone and climbed the stairs, checking on each child with the practiced quiet of long experience. Josh had fallen asleep with a paperback fantasy novel splayed across his chest. Danny was curled in a tiny ball with his stuffed shark, snoring softly. The girls' room was dark except for Emma's reading light, which she clicked off when she heard him in the hallway. "Good night, Dad," she whispered. "Night, sweetheart. Don't stay up too late." In Sophie's room, his youngest had somehow migrated from bed to floor, dragging her blanket with her. Mike gently transferred her back to bed, noting how much longer. Her legs seemed than they had just months ago. Time moved differently when you weren't paying attention. Faster in some ways, almost imperceptibly slow in others. His own room felt both too large and too small. The bed still seemed enormous for one person. But the contents of his life, work clothes for tomorrow, library books in various stages of completion, mountains of clean laundry that needed folding, filled every other available space. Mike changed into sweatpants and an old construction camp t-shirt, then settled into the armchair by the window. Outside, Cedar Falls was settling into night. Porch lights glowed at regular intervals down the street. Someone was walking a dog. He could see the wagging tail and hear the jingle of collar tags. A car passed slowly, its headlights sweeping across the maple trees that lined their street. Tomorrow would bring the same routine. Breakfast chaos, school drop-offs, hardware store duties, afternoon juggling of schedules and needs. But somewhere in that routine, there was a new thread. Music club, Elizabeth offering to help, Emma's perceptive observations about family and choice. Change happened slowly in their lives, often so gradually that Mike didn't notice until something was already different. Tonight felt like one of those pivot points, subtle but significant. Not a dramatic shift, but a gentle redirection. His phone buzzed one more time, an unfamiliar number with a Cedar Falls area code. The text was simple. "Hi Mike, this is Elizabeth, Liz. I got your number from the school directory. Hope that's okay. Just wanted to confirm that Thursday music club pickup works for your schedule. Looking forward to working with Lily. E." Mike stared at the message for a long moment. Such a simple thing, practical communication about childcare logistics. But it felt like more than that. It felt like someone seeing them, acknowledging the complex dance of their daily life, and choosing to help rather than judge. He typed back, "Hi Elizabeth, thanks for reaching out. Thursday works great and I really appreciate your help with this. Lily's excited about music club. Mike." He hit send before he could overthink it. Outside, the last lights were going off in neighboring houses. Cedar Falls was calling it a night, and soon he would too. But for the first time in a long while, Mike looked forward to tomorrow not just as another day to survive and manage, but as the day that might hold small surprises, new connections, unexpected kindnesses. Upstairs, Lily's violin case caught the hallway light, a reminder of choices made and opportunities accepted. Music club. Such a simple thing, really. But in their carefully balanced world, sometimes the simplest changes created the most interesting harmonies. Wednesday morning began with Sophie announcing from her high chair that she had decided to be a dinosaur today, complete with roaring sound effects that could probably be heard down the street. Mike was attempting to scramble eggs while simultaneously helping Josh find his missing geometry book when the doorbell rang at precisely 7:15 a.m. The unexpected sound froze everyone mid-motion. The kids exchanged glances. Nobody ever rang their doorbell this early. Mike wiped his hands on his jeans and peered through the peephole, surprised to find Mrs. Weber from 2 houses down, holding what appeared to be a casserole dish. "Morning, Mike," she chirped when he opened the door, her breath creating small clouds in the chilly air. "I made too much breakfast casserole last night and thought your family might enjoy some. Growing kids need their protein." Behind her, Mike could see her husband attempting to retrieve their escaped poodle from the neighbor's rose bushes. This was clearly a coordinated mission, though he wasn't sure what the objective was. "That's very kind of you," he said, accepting the warm dish. The smell of eggs, sausage, and cheese wafted up, causing his stomach to growl loudly enough that Mrs. Weber smiled knowingly. "I heard about Lily joining the music club. How wonderful. And I hear you've met the new teacher." Her eyes sparkled with the particular interest that all Cedar Falls residents seem to develop when discussing his personal life. "Elizabeth Carter, right? Such a lovely girl. Very responsible." "Yes, we've met," Mike said carefully, recognizing the familiar warning signs. "She's been very helpful with the music club arrangements." "Oh yes, very helpful indeed. And I understand she's quite accomplished. Master's degree and everything." Mrs. Weber adjusted her coat collar, clearly settling in for a longer conversation. "You know, the church is doing a community appreciation dinner next month. Perfect opportunity for people to get to know each other better. I'm on the organizing committee, and we're always looking for volunteers." "I'll keep that in mind," Mike replied, his standard deflection ready. "Thanks again for the casserole. I should get the kids back to breakfast." Of course. And Mike?" She leaned in conspiratorially. "For what it's worth, sometimes the best things happen when we least expect them." As the door closed, behind her, Mike heard Emma's voice from the kitchen. "Let me guess, more matchmaking disguised as neighborly kindness?" "How do you always know?" he called back, carrying the casserole to the dining table. "Because this is Cedar Falls, and you're like the town's favorite project," Emma said, already setting out additional plates. "At least we got free breakfast out of it." The casserole was indeed delicious, and it solved the morning meal crisis while giving Mike time to help Josh locate his geometry book, trapped between the couch cushions, convince Danny that wearing two different shoes wasn't a fashion statement, and referee a debate between Lily and Sophie about whether dinosaurs could play violins. Walking to school felt different today. The late October air carried hints of winter, but the sun broke through morning clouds in golden shafts that made everything glow. Mike noticed details he usually missed. The way Mr. Peterson was meticulously raking his leaves into symmetrical piles, how the corner coffee shop had decorated with pumpkins and twinkle lights, the sound of children's laughter carrying from the school playground even before classes began. After depositing Sophie at Little Bud's, where she proudly announced her dinosaur status to Mrs. Patterson, Mike headed toward Pine Street Elementary, with Lily chattering beside him about tomorrow's music club meeting. "Miss Carter said we're going to learn about how different instruments blend together," Lily explained, skipping to keep up with his longer strides. "And she promised we could try playing all the instruments the school has, not just our own." "That sounds exciting." "Yeah, and Jessica's bringing her flute, and there's a boy named Marcus who plays drums, and..." She continued her enthusiastic rundown until they reached the school steps, where she suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Following her gaze, Mike saw Elizabeth standing near the entrance, but she wasn't alone. A tall man in an expensive-looking coat stood close to her, leaning slightly too far into her personal space. Even from a distance, Mike could sense her discomfort in the way she stepped back slightly, clutching her book bag like a shield. "I should go, Michael," Elizabeth was saying, her voice carrying the polite steel of someone trying to exit a conversation gracefully. "The first bell rings in 5 minutes." "Come on, Liz, just one coffee. What's the harm in that?" The man's voice had the practiced charm of someone who'd used this approach before. "I drove all the way from Detroit to see you. That's got to count for something." "Dad," Lily whispered, tugging on his arm. "That man's making Miss Carter uncomfortable." Mike had already noticed. Something protective stirred in his chest, but he wasn't sure if intervening would make things better or worse. The decision was made for him when the man reached out and touched Elizabeth's arm, causing her to take another step back. "Elizabeth," Mike called out, raising his voice slightly. "Sorry we're running late. Sophie had a dinosaur emergency this morning." Relief washed over her face as she turned toward them. "Mike, Lily, good morning." She took several steps in their direction, effectively breaking away from the unwanted conversation. "I was just giving someone directions." The man's expression hardened as he realized he was being dismissed. "Is this your boyfriend, Liz?" "This is a parent of one of my students," Elizabeth replied firmly, "and I need to prepare for class now." "Right." The man looked Mike up and down with obvious assessment, taking in the work boots, faded jeans, and flannel shirt. "Well, I'll be in town for a few more days. We should catch up properly." "I don't think that's a good idea, Michael." "Oh, come on, don't be like that." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "We had something special once." Elizabeth's jaw tightened. "We had something, past tense. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 26 fifth graders waiting for their morning lesson." The man glanced at Lily, then back at Mike, clearly calculating something in his head. "I'll be around if you change your mind." He walked away with deliberate casualness, but not before shooting one more look over his shoulder. Mike watched him go, noting the BMW parked illegally in the fire zone and the way he seemed to assess every person he passed. "I'm so sorry about that," Elizabeth said once he was out of earshot. "Ex-boyfriend from Detroit. He's been persistent." "Are you okay?" Mike asked. "Yes, just embarrassed that you had to witness that." She managed a smile for Lily. "And sorry, you heard grown-ups being awkward, sweetie. It's okay," Lily said solemnly. "My dad says sometimes people don't know when to take no for an answer." Elizabeth's eyes met Mike's over Lily's head, and something passed between them, a shared understanding perhaps of complications and unwelcome intrusions. "Your dad is very wise," she said. "Speaking of which, are you excited about music club tomorrow?" As Lily launched into another excited recitation of her expectations, Mike found himself studying Elizabeth's face. She maintained bright attentiveness for his daughter, but he could see the lingering tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers twisted the strap of her bag. "Dad, I'm going to be late," Lily announced, checking the imaginary watch she wore on her wrist. "Bye, Miss Carter. See you tomorrow." After Lily disappeared into the building, Mike and Elizabeth stood awkwardly for a moment. "Really? I'm sorry." "About that display," she said again. "I moved to Cedar Falls partly to get away from that situation, and I thought he'd gotten the message." "Some people have trouble with boundaries," Mike said. "Is he likely to cause problems?" "No, nothing like that. He's just—" She searched for words. "Persistent in an annoying way rather than a dangerous one. Thinks if he just tries hard enough, I'll remember why we dated and go back to Detroit with him. And you won't." "God, no." The response was immediate and emphatic. "I came here for a fresh start, and I like it here. I like my students, I like the community feel, I like not having to explain myself to someone every day." The bell rang, signaling 5 minutes to class. "I should let you go," Mike said. "But if he keeps bothering you, let someone know, okay? Cedar Falls looks out for its own." "Thank you, Mike, really." She hesitated, then added, "And thank you for the interruption. Perfect timing. Anytime you need a dinosaur emergency, just let me know." Her laugh was genuine this time, lightening the morning's tension. "I'll keep that in mind." Mike walked to Miller's Hardware with more on his mind than usual. Something about the encounter, the way Elizabeth had handled herself, the protective instinct it had triggered in him, even Lily's mature observation, lingered as he unlocked the store and began his morning routine. Tom arrived 20 minutes later, already buried in his phone. "Morning! Did you see the weather forecast? First freeze warning tonight." "No, I was dealing with breakfast casseroles and unwelcome visitors this morning." "Visitors?" Tom looked up with interest. "Please tell me Mrs. Rogers wasn't staging another intervention. Different visitor. Someone from Elizabeth Carter's past making a surprise appearance at the school." Tom's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding. "Ah, the ex-boyfriend tour of Cedar Falls. That's unfortunate." "You know him?" "No, but Kelly mentioned something about a Detroit license plate causing a stir in town yesterday. Cemetery Falls has about 12 gossip networks, and at least 3 of them are dedicated to monitoring out-of-town visitors." Mike began unpacking a shipment of space heaters, preparing for winter's inevitable demands. I might have played the concerned parent card to help her exit the conversation. Good man, Cedar Falls protects our teachers. Tom joined him with the inventory clipboard. Speaking of which, Kelly finally met the mysterious Miss Carter at the coffee shop yesterday. Full report, she's genuinely nice, orders her coffee black, and tips well, and doesn't seem to have any interest in town gossip. That's a comprehensive character assessment from a coffee order. You'd be surprised what Kelly can deduce from a single coffee transaction. It's her superpower. The morning customer rush began before Mike could respond. An elderly gentleman needed help selecting a reliable snow shovel. A young couple buying their first home required extensive consultation about weatherproofing their windows. A harried mother dragged in 3 boys under 10, searching for replacement parts for the washing machine her sons had allegedly broken during an experiment. Around 10:30, during a brief lull, Tom cornered Mike near the electrical supplies section. "So," he said, with the tone of someone about to dispense brotherly wisdom, "when are you going to admit that you're interested in this woman?" "I'm not interested in anyone. I'm interested in functioning household logistics. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, you know." "Tom, listen to me for a minute. You've been running on autopilot for 3 years, and that's fine. That's what you needed to do. But your kids are seeing you interact with another adult, and they're watching how you handle it." Tom leaned against the shelf display. "Emma's practically a teenager. She's figuring out what relationships look like. What example do you want to set?" "I'm setting the example of being their father." "Which you do beautifully, but you can be more than one thing, Mike?" The conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Patterson from Little Bud's preschool, pushing through the door with wind-blown hair and a frazzled expression. "Mike, thank goodness you're working today. Sophie had a little accident with finger paints during dinosaur art time. I'm afraid her clothes are, well, they're more Jackson Pollock than Gap kids at this point." Mike sighed, already reaching for his keys. "I'll pick up something new for her. Does she need to come home?" No, she's having a wonderful time. I just thought you'd want to know." And she insisted I tell you that her dinosaur painting is ferocious and beautiful. Her exact words. After Mrs. Patterson left, Mike grabbed his jacket. "Emergency clothes shopping. Can you handle things here?" "Of course, but Mike," Tom caught his arm, "just think about what I said, and maybe consider that sometimes the best things in life come with their own complicated logistics." The children's clothing store was mercifully empty on a Wednesday morning. Mike navigated the racks with the efficiency of someone who'd done this dance before, selecting a simple purple dress with dinosaur prints, perfect for Sophie's current obsession. As he paid, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Elizabeth. Hope it's okay to text during school hours. I'm on my planning period. Just wanted to thank you again for this morning. Your Lily is wonderful, by the way. She helped another student who was struggling with fractions today. Real empathy." Mike read the message twice, struck by the casual way she'd shared the observation about his daughter. How many other moments like this had he missed? How many small kindnesses or struggles had happened outside his awareness? He typed back, "Lily gets that from her mother, and you don't need to thank me. Glad I could help." Her response came quickly. "Looking forward to music club tomorrow. I think the kids will love the harmony exercises I've planned." Lily's been singing in the shower all week in preparation. Slight exaggeration, but not much. "That's wonderful. Music should be everywhere." Mike found himself smiling at his phone, then felt slightly ridiculous. Tom's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes the best things in life come with their own complicated logistics. After dropping off Sophie's new clothes at the preschool and receiving a hug that left rainbow fingerprints on his flannel shirt, Mike spent the afternoon installing a new ceiling fan for Mrs. Chen and helping young Jeremy Miller repair his bicycle chain. Most of Cedar Falls knew to come to Mike for those in-between jobs that didn't quite require a licensed contractor, but exceeded most people's skill levels. The afternoon pickup routine went smoothly for once. Sophie was practically glowing with pride over her ferocious and beautiful dinosaur artwork. Lily couldn't stop talking about how Miss Carter had brought in a full-sized keyboard to demonstrate chord progressions. Josh had apparently earned star student status in science for his volcano model. Even Danny and Emma had positive reports from their respective teachers. "Family dinner meeting tonight," Mike announced as they walked home. "We need to talk about cold weather routines and who needs what for winter." The response was a collective groan from all 5 children. "Can't we just wing it like last year?" Josh asked hopefully. "Last year we ended up with Danny wearing Emma's 2 small boots for 2 weeks because no one told me his were falling apart." Danny scuffed the sidewalk with the aforementioned hand-me-down boots, which were indeed held together more by duct tape than original construction. "These are fine." "Those are not fine. Those are an insult to the concept of footwear." After dinner, homemade chili that everyone actually enjoyed, and only minor battles over cornbread consumption, Mike gathered everyone in the living room. He'd learned that family meetings worked better when everyone was fed, and the promise of dessert loomed on the horizon. "All right, people, winter prep check. Emma, can you coordinate the kids' jacket situation? Make a list of who needs what." "Already done," Emma said, producing a neatly organized list from her pocket. "Danny needs boots. Lily's coat zipper is broken beyond repair. Josh grew out of everything except his heaviest parka. And Sophie's snow pants from last year look like they're made for someone's doll." "And me?" "Your jacket is fine, but your work boots are questionable, and you've been wearing the same winter hat since approximately 1985. Mike touched his ancient bear's cap defensively. "This hat has character." "This hat has structural damage," Josh corrected. "I can see your bald spot through the holes." "I'm not bald. I'm aerodynamically efficient. Sophie, what do you need for daycare?" Sophie, who had been building an elaborate tower with wooden blocks, looked up solemnly. "Mr. Buttons needs a jacket too." "Mr. Buttons, the stuffed raccoon. He gets cold," Mike added, tiny raccoon jacket to his mental list, right between fix Lily's zipper and replace Danny's boots. "One more thing," Emma said, her tone shifting to that careful neutral she used for sensitive topics. "The church is having that community appreciation thing next month. I heard some kids talking about it at school." "What about it?" "Just, people are starting to ask who we're bringing, like as dates." Mike felt 5 pairs of eyes settle on him. "It's not a couples thing, is it?" "It's whatever you make it," Emma said diplomatically. "But some families go together. Some people bring friends. Some couples go as dates." Lily raised her hand like she was in class. "Miss Carter doesn't have anyone to go with either. She mentioned it today when some of the parents were picking up kids." The observation hung in the air with the weight of a suggestion pretending to be a fact. "I think we should go as a family," Mike said finally. "All 6 of us make a statement about what family looks like." "That's a great idea," Danny chimed in. "Besides, Sophie can show off her dinosaur impressions." "Roar!" Sophie demonstrated immediately, causing everyone to laugh and effectively shifting the conversation to safer territory. Later that evening, after homework help, bath negotiations, and the usual chaos of bedtime routines, Mike found himself in the kitchen doing dishes while Emma finished her studying at the table. "Dad," she said during a quiet moment, "that guy at Miss Carter's school this morning, who was he?" "An ex-boyfriend from Detroit." "Why?" "Just the way he looked at you, and at Lily, like he was trying to figure something out." Mike paused in his dishwashing. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it. But when people look at our family, they usually have one of 3 reactions: pity, curiosity, or judgment. This guy looked more calculating, like he was doing math in his head." The insight struck Mike as both perceptive and unsettling. When had Emma become so attuned to subtle social dynamics? "I'm sure it was nothing," he said, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. "Probably." Emma gathered her books. "Good night, Dad. And for what it's worth, I think Miss Carter likes it here. She seems different from her Detroit self, if that makes sense." After Emma went upstairs, Mike finished the dishes and took his nightly tour through the house. Everything was quiet, except for the normal sounds. Josh's fan humming, Lily's gentle snoring, Danny's stuffed animals having what sounded like a muffled conversation, Sophie's occasional sleep-talking about something involving purple elephants. In his own room, Mike's phone showed a missed call from an unknown number with a Detroit area code. No voicemail. Probably a wrong number, but combined with the morning's encounter and Emma's observations, it left him feeling slightly unsettled. He was pulling on his usual sleep attire, ancient University of Michigan sweatpants and a t-shirt that had once been navy blue, when his phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth. "Sorry to text so late. Quick question. Would you be comfortable with me picking up Sophie tomorrow, as well as Lily? I realized I drive right past Little Bud's on my way home, and it might simplify your afternoon." Mike stared at the message. Such a simple offer, but one with layers of implications. Accepting help meant acknowledging vulnerability. It meant letting someone else into their routine. It meant trust. But it also meant giving himself an hour of breathing room between work and evening chaos. An hour that could be spent grocery shopping without 5 kids in tow, or catching up on laundry, or simply sitting quietly with a cup of coffee. He typed, "That's very generous of you. Are you sure? Sophie can be intense." The response came immediately. "I teach 5th graders. I'm trained in intensity management. Plus, Lily can help me navigate big sister protocol." "All right then. Sophie will be thrilled. Fair warning, she's currently in a dinosaur phase." "Perfect. I loved dinosaurs when I was her age. Still do, actually." Mike smiled at his phone, then caught himself. When had text conversations with another adult started feeling this natural? When had he begun looking forward to them? As he turned off the light and settled into bed, he thought about Tom's words, Emma's observations, and the unexpected ways people could become part of your life. Outside, Cedar Falls was settling into night under the first freeze warning of the season. Inside, 5 children slept safely, their father no longer the only adult invested in their daily welfare. It was a small change, barely noticeable in the grand scheme of family logistics. But sometimes the most important shifts happen quietly, in text messages and casual offers, in moments of unexpected protection and shared understanding. Sometimes the best things in life did indeed come with their own complicated logistics, but maybe, just maybe, the complications were worth it. The first frost had arrived overnight, coating Cedar Falls in a delicate crystal shell that made everything look like it had been touched by fairy magic. Mike stood at the kitchen window, nursing his first cup of coffee while watching the sun slowly melt the ice from their backyard maple tree. Today was Thursday, music club day, which meant Lily was bouncing around the kitchen wearing her lucky socks and practicing finger positions on an invisible violin. "Dad, my bow needs more rosin," she announced, spreading peanut butter on toast with one hand while miming violin techniques with the other. "Miss Carter said it would make my tone clearer." "Add it to the list," Mike replied, already visualizing his lunch break spent at the music store 3 towns over. Cedar Falls' single music shop had closed 6 months ago, leaving parents to venture to Millfield for instrument supplies. Josh appeared in the doorway, his hair sticking up at impossible angles. "Can I have money for the book fair today? They have graphic novels." "How much?" $50. Try again." 20? Closer to 10. Danny thundered down the stairs next, attempting to slide on the hardwood floor in his socks and failing spectacularly, arms windmilling as he crashed into the chair. "Dad, I need poster board for my state project. Today." "When's it due?" "Tomorrow." Mike closed his eyes briefly, counting to 10. "And when did you get this assignment?" 2 weeks ago, but I forgot to tell you. Danny, we've talked about the assignment time machine theory. It doesn't exist." "I know." Danny hung his head, dramatically. "I'm doomed." Emma rescued the conversation by appearing with Sophie already dressed and fed. "Poster board is on my school supply list. I grabbed extra last month. Danny can use one of mine." "Thank you, Emma." Crisis averted. Mike poured her a cup of coffee, black, just the way she'd started drinking it recently. Another sign that she was growing up too fast. "How do you keep track of everything?" "Simple organization and realistic expectations," she said, accepting the mug. "Unlike Danny, I don't assume time travel technology will solve my problems." "Hey!" Danny protested. "I just forgot." The morning juggling act continued with its usual rhythm. Backpacks checked, lunches distributed, teeth brushed, arguments mediated. But today held an undercurrent of anticipation that Mike couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the change in weather, the way crisp air sharpened everything. Maybe it was Lily's infectious excitement about music club. Or maybe, and he was trying not to analyze this too deeply, it was knowing he'd see Elizabeth again. The walk to school felt different in the frost-kissed morning. Sophie insisted on stomping puddles that had frozen overnight, delighting in the crunch of ice beneath her boots. Lily chattered non-stop about musical theory concepts that went over Mike's head, while the older kids scattered into their various friend groups along the way. After depositing Sophie at Little Bud's, Mike found himself lingering near Pine Street Elementary longer than necessary. He told himself he was just making sure Lily got safely to class, but truthfully, he was hoping for another glimpse of Elizabeth. She had a way of brightening mornings, even when dealing with difficult situations. Sure enough, he spotted her near the bicycle racks, helping a small boy untangle his backpack from his bike handlebars. She wore a deep blue coat today, and her hair was pulled back in a loose braid that made her look younger, more approachable. "Morning," Mike called out as Lily headed inside. Elizabeth turned, smiling when she recognized him. "Good morning. Beautiful day for the first freeze, isn't it? If you enjoy the sensation of breathing broken glass." She laughed, her breath creating small clouds between them. "I'm from northern Michigan. This is practically summer weather for me." "That explains a lot about your character." Mike glanced toward the parking lot, noting the absence of a certain BMW. "I see your persistent visitor isn't making an encore appearance." "No, thankfully. Though," she hesitated, that uncertain look crossing her face again. "I did get a few strange phone calls yesterday evening. Unknown numbers, just hang-ups when I answered." "That's unsettling. Probably telemarketers or wrong numbers." She shrugged, but Mike caught the forced casualness. "Anyway, are you still okay with the afternoon pickup arrangement? I promised to return both girls in one piece." "Of course. Sophie's been talking about it non-stop. She wants to show you her dinosaur impression." "I'm looking forward to it. And Lily told me yesterday that Sophie named a stuffed animal after my great-aunt. Apparently, Elizabeth was taken already." Mike blinked. "What did she name it?" "Carter. She has a stuffed bear named Carter now." The image of his 4-year-old naming toys after Elizabeth's last name hit him with unexpected warmth. "That's actually kind of adorable." "I thought so too." Elizabeth glanced at her watch. "I should get to class. Oh, and Mike, the church fall potluck. Emma mentioned. You might come as a family? That's the plan. 6 Harrisons invading the community center. It'll be nice to see some familiar faces there. This being new in town thing is tougher than I expected." They shared a moment of understanding before the second bell rang, sending Elizabeth hurrying toward her classroom. Mike continued to Miller's hardware, but found his thoughts had settled into a different pattern today. For months, his days had been about surviving, managing, keeping all the plates spinning. But lately, especially since Elizabeth had entered their orbit, he'd noticed space for something else. Not happiness exactly. He wasn't ready for that word yet, but possibility. The hardware store was busy with people preparing for winter's full arrival. Mike spent his morning helping contractors stock up on heating supplies, advising homeowners on pipe insulation, and listening to Earl Morrison's annual rant about squirrels infiltrating his attic. During his lunch break, he made the drive to Millfield's music store. The elderly owner, Mr. Chen, greeted him like an old friend despite their infrequent encounters. "Ah, the violin Rosen father returns. How's the little musician?" "She's flourishing. Her teacher started a music club." "Wonderful, wonderful. Music brings people together." Mr. Chen led him to the string instrument section. "How is this teacher?" "Good instructor." "Very good. She's dedicated." "Ah." Something in Mr. Chen's expression suggested he heard more than Mike had intended to reveal. It's important, having good teachers. They see potential where others see problems. Mike selected the rosin and added a spare set of strings to his purchase. "Speaking of teachers, have you met the new 5th grade teacher at Pine Street? Elizabeth Carter." "Not formally, but I saw her in here Tuesday. Bought sheet music for beginners, asked very specific questions about chord progressions and harmony exercises." Mr. Chen bagged the items carefully. "She mentioned wanting to build children's confidence through group playing. Rare approach these days. She seems to have a gift for connecting with students." "The best teachers do." Mr. Chen handed him the bag, his weathered face creasing into a knowing smile. "Sometimes. They connect with parents too. That's how communities strengthen." The observation stayed with Mike as he drove back to Cedar Falls. How many people were watching his interactions with Elizabeth, drawing conclusions, making assumptions? In a town this size, anonymity was impossible. Every conversation, every shared glance, every simple coffee order became part of some larger narrative that the community was collectively writing. Back at the hardware store, Tom cornered him during the afternoon lull. "So, Kelly had an interesting conversation at the bank this morning," Tom said, clearly leading to something. "I'm almost afraid to ask. That guy, Michael from Detroit, he's been asking questions around town about you." Mike's attention sharpened. "What kind of questions? How long you've been widowed? How many kids you have, whether you're dating anyone, general information gathering, but specific enough to be concerning." "Did he say why?" "Claimed he was just curious about the local competition, according to Mrs. Rhodes at the bank. But Kelly got the impression he was collecting data rather than just making conversation." Mike felt something tighten in his chest. "You think he sees me as a threat?" "I think he's trying to figure out the lay of the land, whether there's something serious developing or if he still has a shot." Tom leaned against the counter. "Kelly also mentioned that he's staying at the Millfield Motel, which suggests he's not just passing through." "Great. A persistent ex with time to kill. Have you talked to Elizabeth about this?" "She mentioned some hang-up calls yesterday, but downplayed it." Tom nodded slowly. "Might be worth keeping an eye on things. Not to overreact, but Cedar Falls takes care of its own." The afternoon passed with Mike's attention divided between customer service and worry. He helped Mrs. Patterson select a space heater for her classroom, assisted a contractor with bulk wire purchases, and fielded Danny's frantic call about forgetting his lunch. But underneath the routine tasks, his mind kept returning to the mornings. Conversations, the hang-up calls, the persistent ex asking questions. When 6 o'clock came, Mike locked up the store and walked home, noting the early darkness that winter brought. Streetlights were already glowing, and the temperature had dropped enough that his breath was visible. Cedar Falls looked peaceful in the dusk, houses lit from within, families settling into evening routines. His own house glowed warm and welcoming. Before he could reach the porch, the door flew open, and Sophie launched herself at his legs. "Daddy! Miss Carter made hot chocolate with little marshmallows, and she knows about dinosaurs, real ones that science people found." Mike caught his daughter mid-tackle, lifting her into a hug that left chocolate fingerprints on his jacket. "Sounds like you had a good afternoon." "The best afternoon ever." Inside, he found a scene that stopped him in his tracks. Elizabeth sat at their dining table, helping Lily and Josh with their homework, while Danny attempted to build something elaborate with Sophie's blocks. Emma moved between kitchen and dining room, setting out plates for dinner with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this countless times. "Hope you don't mind," Elizabeth said, looking up from Josh's algebra notebook. Sophie wasn't ready for the afternoon to end, and honestly, neither was I. "Is it okay that I stayed?" "Of course." Mike set Sophie down, noting how easily Elizabeth had integrated into their evening routine. "You didn't have to help with homework. I wanted to, and Josh was really close to understanding quadratic equations. We couldn't give up now." Josh beamed, actually appearing enthusiastic about mathematics. "Miss Carter explains it way better than Mr. Anderson." "It's all about finding the right angle," Elizabeth said, then caught Mike's amused expression. "Pun not intended, but I'll take it." Emma appeared at his elbow. "Dinner's just spaghetti and meatballs, but there's plenty if Miss Carter wants to stay." The casual invitation held layers of significance. Emma had never invited anyone outside their family to share a meal since Marie's death. Mike caught his daughter's eye, trying to read her motivation, but she just smiled and returned to the kitchen. "I wouldn't want to impose," Elizabeth said, though something in her voice suggested she wanted to accept. "You're not imposing," Mike found himself saying. "Besides, Sophie seems to have appointed you official dinosaur consultant, so you're basically staff now." "Roar," Sophie demonstrated from her perch on Danny's shoulders. "That's what T-Rex says when they're happy. In that case, how can I refuse?" Elizabeth closed the algebra book and stood up. "What can I do to help?" The next 30 minutes passed in organized chaos that somehow felt more manageable with an extra adult present. Elizabeth helped Danny set the table while discussing the merits of various dinosaur species. She convinced Lily to practice violin after dinner by promising to accompany her on the keyboard for one song. She deflected Josh's attempts to avoid vegetable consumption with gentle humor. Most impressively, she managed to coax actual conversation from Emma instead of the monosyllabic responses that strangers usually received. Dinner conversation flowed naturally. Sophie dominated the discussion with her enthusiastic recounting of music club, complete with dramatic reenactments of various instruments. Lily added technical details about chord progressions that impressed even Mike. Josh and Danny argued good-naturedly about whether dinosaurs could survive in Michigan winters. Emma asked Elizabeth about her college experiences, drawing out stories that had everyone laughing. "So you really started a flash mob in the library?" Josh asked, fascinated. "Finals week makes people desperate for entertainment," Elizabeth said, grinning. 20 students spontaneously dancing to Thriller in the stacks. The librarians were not amused. "That's epic," Danny declared. "I bet Cedar Falls has never seen anything like that." "Give it time. The year's still young." Mike watched the exchange, struck by how easily Elizabeth navigated their family dynamic. She didn't try too hard or speak down to anyone. She just fit. It was both wonderful and terrifying. After dinner, homework resumed while Mike and Elizabeth tackled the dishes. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, wash, rinse, dry, that felt startlingly domestic. "Thank you for staying," Mike said, handing her a plate. "It's been a while since the kids had a dinner guest." "Thank you for having me. Your family is special." Special is one word for it. Chaotic, overwhelming, and occasionally feral also. Apply. "I prefer organized chaos with heart." She paused in her drying. "Mike, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "That phone call thing yesterday, it wasn't just telemarketers, was it?" He considered deflecting, then decided against it. "Tom mentioned that your ex has been asking questions around town." "What kind of questions?" "About me, about us, whether we're dating." Elizabeth set down the towel, her expression tightening. "That's presumptuous of him. It's also potentially problematic. I don't want you to feel like you can't be friends with my family because some guy's monitoring the situation." "Is that what we are? Friends?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither seemed ready to fully address. Mike focused on scrubbing a particularly stubborn pot. "I'd like to think so," he said finally. "Though I'm not sure I remember how to be friends with adults anymore. Between work and kids, most of my social interaction involves discussing whether Pokemon cards count as currency in school. For what it's worth, I think you're doing a remarkable job balancing everything. Most days, I feel like I'm failing at all of it simultaneously. That's called parenting. You're supposed to feel that way." Elizabeth resumed drying, a comfortable silence settling between them. "Mike?" "Yeah? I'm not going anywhere. Michael can ask all the questions he wants, make all the assumptions he likes. I moved to Cedar Falls to build something new, and I'm not letting anyone chase me away from that." The quiet determination in her voice reminded Mike of Marie in some ways, not in appearance or mannerisms, but in that core strength that said, "This far and no further." "Good," he said simply. "Cedar Falls is better with you here." They finished the dishes in peaceful quiet, punctuated by sounds from the living room. Lily practicing scales, Josh helping Danny with his state project, Emma reading to Sophie from what sounded like a dinosaur. Encyclopedia, normal sounds, comforting sounds, but with an additional layer now. Elizabeth's laugh blending with his children's voices, her occasional interjection fitting seamlessly into their established patterns. Around 8 o'clock, as the kids began their bedtime routines, Elizabeth gathered her things to leave. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, pulling on her coat. "I'm picking up both girls after school. If you're sure you don't mind. Sophie can be a handful in the car. I teach 26 fifth graders every day. I think I can handle one creative 4-year-old. The kids lined up for goodbyes, Sophie with an enthusiastic hug, Lily with a dignified handshake that turned into an awkward side hug, Josh with a wave from the stairs, Danny with a cheerful "see ya," and Emma with a genuine "thanks for helping" with dinner. Mike walked Elizabeth to her car, noting how the evening had turned crisp enough to numb exposed skin. "Drive carefully," he said. "That frost is deceptive on the roads." "I will." She paused with her hand on the car door. "Mike, this was really nice, just being part of something normal for an evening. It was nice for us too, having another adult around changes the dynamic in a good way. Well, if you ever need a homework helper or dinosaur consultant again, you know where to find me." She drove away with a wave, her taillights disappearing around the corner toward Maple Avenue. Mike stood outside for a moment longer, breathing in the cold air and thinking about the subtle shift in their evening routine. How natural it had felt to have Elizabeth at their table, how easily she'd integrated into their controlled chaos. Inside, he found Emma waiting in the kitchen, supposedly loading the dishwasher, but clearly lingering. "She's good with us," Emma said without preamble. "She is. Not just patient or nice, she actually seems to enjoy the circus. Your siblings are not circus animals. Dad, I've seen the look people get when they realize we're all yours." Like they're calculating how quickly they can escape. Emma faced him directly, but Miss Carter just rolled with it. Made jokes, helped with homework, acted like having dinner with 5 kids was the most normal thing in the world. It is normal for us. You know what I mean. She dried her hands on a dish towel. I like her, not just as a teacher, but as whatever this is developing into. Mike studied his daughter's face, noting the careful way she chose her words. When had Emma become the family's emotional diplomat? It's not developing into anything, he said, though the protest lacked conviction. Okay, Dad. Emma's smile suggested she knew better. But just so you know, we're all okay with it if it does. After Emma headed upstairs, Mike did his nightly check on each child. Sophie was already asleep, Mr. Buttons and the newly acquired Carter bear flanking her pillow. Lily had fallen asleep with sheet music scattered across her bed, probably still humming harmony exercises in her dreams. Danny's room showed evidence of his state project explosion, with poster board and colored markers covering every surface. Josh had passed out with a fantasy novel, bookmark abandoned somewhere around page 237. Emma's light was off, but he heard her phone buzz with what was probably a goodnight text from one of her friends. 12 years old, and already managing a social life that extended beyond family. Another reminder that time moved relentlessly forward, whether he was ready or not. In his own room, Mike's phone showed a text from an unknown number. He hesitated before opening it, remembering the hang-up calls Elizabeth had mentioned. This is Michael. I saw you with Liz today. We should talk man-to-man. 5550 John Doe 7. Mike stared at the message for a long moment. The presumption of it, the casual Liz, the man-to-man suggestion, irritated him more than it should. But underneath the irritation was something else, protective anger. Not just for Elizabeth, but for the fragile thing that might be growing between them, for his children who were opening their hearts to someone new. He deleted the message without responding. Whatever Michael from Detroit wanted to discuss could wait. Or better yet, never happen. As he prepared for bed, Mike's thoughts returned to the evening. The easy conversation, the shared laughter, the way Elizabeth had made their chaotic dinner feel like a celebration rather than a management crisis. For 3 years, he'd focused on being enough for his children, on creating a stable environment where they could heal and grow. He'd never considered that enough might someday expand to include someone else. But tonight, watching Elizabeth help Sophie with her dinosaur sounds while simultaneously coaching Lily through a challenging passage of music, listening to her laugh at Danny's jokes while deflecting Josh's attempts to avoid homework, tonight had shown him possibilities he hadn't dared imagine. Outside, Cedar Falls settled into winter's rhythm. Heat kicked on in houses up and down the street. Television flickered through curtained windows. Dogs barked their evening messages to each other across yards and fences. Normal sounds in a normal town where normal life continued its eternal dance. Maybe that's all this was, normal life insisting on happening despite his attempts to keep it at bay. Normal life bringing new people into their orbit, creating new connections, offering new chances for the heart to risk itself again. Mike turned off his light and listened to the house breathing around him. Somewhere, Elizabeth was settling into her own evening routine, maybe thinking about their dinner, maybe planning tomorrow's lessons, maybe dealing with more calls from an unwelcome past. Whatever came next, with Michael's persistence, with Cedar Falls gossip mill, with the growing complexity of feelings between him and Elizabeth, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else these past 3 years. One day at a time, with as much grace as they could muster, and the understanding that family, whatever form it took, was worth protecting. The last thought before sleep took him was a simple one. Tomorrow was Friday. Another week nearly complete, another small milestone in the ongoing story of the Harrison family. And for the first time in a long time, he found himself curious about the next chapter. Friday morning arrived with an unexpected blanket of snow, not the gentle dusting Cedar Falls had grown accustomed to, but a real snowfall that transformed the town into a winter wonderland overnight. Mike stood at the kitchen window watching. Flakes continued to drift down, and knew this meant delays, closures, and the kind of beautiful chaos that only the first significant snow brings. "Snow day?" Emma asked hopefully, appearing with her phone already displaying the school's automated message system. No such luck. 2-hour delay, which means total schedule upheaval. The delay rippled through their morning routine like a stone thrown in still water. Little Bud's preschool would open late, meaning Sophie needed different pickup arrangements. Music club was postponed to next week, which meant disappointment for Lily, but relief for the logistics. Mike mentally recalculated work schedules, childcare, timing, and the dozen small adjustments that a simple weather change demanded. "I can stay with Sophie until preschool opens," Emma offered. "My first class is just study hall anyway." "You don't mind missing the extra sleep?" "Dad, have you met this family? Sleep is a luxury none of us really experience anyway." 2 hours later, Mike finally made it to Miller's Hardware, where the early morning rush was predictable. Salt, shovels, and snowblowers flying off the shelves. Tom greeted him with a knowing look. "Kelly says the gossip networks are in overdrive today. Apparently, yesterday's dinner guest at the Harrison household has become front-page news." "How do people even know about that?" "Mrs. Peterson from Little Bud's saw Elizabeth's car in your driveway. Mrs. Rhodes saw her helping with groceries through your front window. Danny told his friend Marcus, who told his mom." Tom began restocking the ice melt display. "It's Cedar Falls, Mike. Information travels at light speed. And what's the current narrative? Split down the middle. Half the town thinks it's wonderful and long overdue. The other half is reserving judgment until they see Michael from Detroit's next move." "His next move?" "Word is he's planning to stick around through the weekend. Kelly heard he reserved a table for 2 at Milner's Bistro for Saturday night." Mike felt his jaw tighten. He's actually expecting her to go to dinner with him? Expecting and hoping are 2 different things, but it's creating quite the theater for our local entertainment-starved population. The morning passed in a blur of snow-related emergencies. Mrs. Chen needed emergency heat lamp bulbs for her greenhouse. The Thompson twins had broken their neighbor's mail for the 3rd time this winter with poorly aimed snowballs. Old Mr. Hendricks required an entire new weatherproofing system after discovering his attic had developed what he called snow infiltration. Around 11, during a brief lull, Mike's phone rang. Elizabeth's name on the caller ID made his pulse quicken unexpectedly. "Hi, it's me." Her voice came through slightly breathless. "I'm sorry to call during work hours, but I could use some advice." "Everything okay?" "Define okay." "I'm currently hiding in my classroom supply closet because Michael showed up at the school again. Principal Miller had to have him escorted off the premises." "Wait, he was on school property." "He brought flowers to my classroom. Big, expensive. Arrangement that he announced was for our date tonight, in front of my 4th period class." Mike's grip on the phone tightened. "That's completely inappropriate. I told him I wasn't interested, that I couldn't have personal relationships in the workplace, but he wouldn't leave. He kept saying he'd driven all this way, made reservations, that I was being unreasonable." Her voice carried a tremor of frustration, mixed with embarrassment. The kids were staring, and I didn't know how to handle it. "Where is he now?" "Gone, I think. Principal Miller threatened to call the police if he didn't leave immediately. But Mike, I'm worried about tonight, about tomorrow. He's not taking the hint, and I don't know how to make it clearer without escalating the situation." "Maybe it's time to escalate. This isn't just annoying anymore, it's harassment." She was quiet for a moment. "I just moved here to get away from drama. I don't want to be the new teacher who brought small-town problems into the school." Elizabeth, you didn't bring anything. This is someone else's behavior affecting your life. That's not your fault. I know, logically. But emotionally, you're allowed to feel however you need to feel. And then we figure out how to handle it. We. The word had slipped out, but Mike didn't regret it. If you want backup, you've got it. Cedar Falls takes care of its own, remember? That's what Tom said when I called earlier looking for you. Tom? When did you talk to Tom? About 10 minutes ago. Apparently the hardware store gossip network is more efficient than the school's intercom system. He offered to organize a coincidental community meeting at Milner's tomorrow night if Michael tries to force that dinner date. Despite everything, Mike found himself smiling. That sounds like Tom and like Cedar Falls. It's overwhelming, but also kind of wonderful. I've never lived somewhere where people actually cared enough to get involved. Sometimes the involvement can feel like interference, but mostly it comes from a good place. Mike? Her voice softened. Thank you for being my person in this. I know it's not your problem, but having someone who actually listens without trying to fix everything immediately means more than you know. I'm always here if you need someone to listen. Or if you need someone who knows how to make a simple deterrent look like a coincidence. Her laugh was warm and genuine. I should go. Lunch duty in 5 minutes, and 26 fifth graders who are probably wondering why their teacher was hiding in the supply closet. After they hung up, Mike found himself staring at his phone for a long moment. We. The word had felt right. Saying it, natural in a way that surprised him. When had Elizabeth Carter become someone he automatically included in his we? The afternoon brought a steady stream of customers preparing for the weekend's weather forecast. More snow expected. By Sunday, Mike helped the volunteer fire department prepare their equipment for winter calls, advised 3 different families on emergency heating options, and listened to an extensive debate about whether snowblowers were worth the investment for Cedar Falls' typically mild winters. Around 3 o'clock, Tom found him organizing the electrical supplies section. Kelly has an update on our Detroit friend. Thought you should know. I'm listening. He's been at the corner cafe all afternoon, nursing coffee, asking questions, showing people his phone with what I assume are pictures of him and Elizabeth from happier times. Building his case for public sympathy. That's Kelly's interpretation, making sure everyone knows they're technically still friends, that he's just trying to reconnect with someone who means something to him. Tom passed him a box of outlet covers. Strategic emotional manipulation disguised as persistence. How's it playing with the local audience? Mixed reviews. Some people buy the romantic persistence angle, others see right through it. Tom paused. The interesting thing is, he's been asking specifically about your kids, ages, interests, how long you've been single. Mike's attention sharpened. Why would he care about my children? Could be innocent curiosity, or could be calculating whether you're serious competition. Either way, something to keep in mind. The rest of his shift passed with Mike's thoughts divided between customer service and growing concern. By the time 6 o'clock came, he was more than ready to close up shop and head home to the familiar chaos of evening routines. The walk home felt different in the snow. Cedar Falls looked like a Christmas card, houses glowing warmly against the white backdrop, children's voices carrying across the muffled landscape as they built snowmen and staged epic snowball fights. Mike could see his own children through their living room window as he approached, Emma helping Sophie with something at the table, Josh and Danny engaged in what appeared to be a heated debate involving extensive hand gestures. "Dad!" Sophie launched herself at him the moment he opened the front door. "Look what we made!" She dragged him to the kitchen table, where an elaborate gingerbread village sprawled across multiple cookie sheets. Emma looked up with flour in her hair and a satisfied expression. "We decided to combat delayed schedules with aggressive baking." she announced. Also, stress relief. Lots of stress relief. It's amazing, Mike said, genuinely impressed by the detailed construction. Very architectural. Lily did the music. School, Danny pointed out proudly, complete with tiny violin windows. And I made the dinosaur museum, Sophie added, pointing to a structure that did indeed feature small frosting dinosaurs. The evening unfolded with surprising smoothness. Homework was completed without major battles. Dinner, takeout pizza, a Friday tradition, was consumed with minimal negotiation. Bath time involved only minor rebellion. Even the bedtime routine proceeded with unusual cooperation. It wasn't until the kids were settled and Mike was cleaning up the gingerbread construction zone that he noticed Emma lingering in the kitchen. Something on your mind? Maybe, or maybe I'm overthinking. She perched on the counter, swinging her legs like she had when she was much younger. That guy from Detroit, Michael. What about him? Some of the kids at school were talking. His confrontation with Miss Carter was the afternoon entertainment, and then Jen Miller, the principal's daughter, said her dad was worried about the situation. Worried how? Just that the guy seemed really intense. More than your average. Case of, she said no and he won't listen. Like there was something underneath the persistence. Mike set down the dish towel, giving Emma his full attention. Did Jen say anything specific? Just that her dad was going to reach out to Sheriff's Department, make sure they're aware of the situation. Nothing official, just a heads-up kind of thing. The protective instinct Mike had been feeling crystallized into something sharper. If Principal Miller was concerned enough to involve law enforcement, even informally, then this was moving beyond awkward romantic pursuit. Thanks for telling me. And Em, if you hear anything else, anything at all, let me know, okay? Of course, Dad? Yeah? I know everyone in town has opinions about you and Miss Carter. And I know it's complicated with this Michael situation, but she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. I think she makes you happy, not just less stressed or whatever, actually happy. The observation caught him off guard with its accuracy. When did you become so perceptive? When Mom died, someone had to start paying attention to the emotional climate around here. She slid off the counter. I'm just saying, whatever happens with the Detroit drama, don't let it scare you away from something good. We've all had enough loss in this family. After Emma headed upstairs, Mike finished cleaning while processing his daughter's words. She was right about several things. Elizabeth did make him happy. The emotional climate of their household had shifted in positive ways, and they had all experienced enough loss to last several lifetimes. His phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth. Made it home safely. Thank you for being my sounding board today. Tomorrow's a new day, and I'm not going to let anyone's persistence ruin my Sunday library book sale plans. He typed back, glad you're home safe. Let me know if you need backup for the book sale. I'm excellent at carrying heavy boxes and providing diversionary tactics. Is that an offer to help or an excuse to check out the competition for Sophie's attention? I saw how she looked at those early reader dinosaur books last week. Can't it be both? Absolutely. Fair warning though, I'm planning to buy approximately 17 books I definitely don't need. My self-control around book sales is non-existent. A woman after my own heart. My kids have already staged interventions about my library book checkout. Abbott's. Well, if you're going to develop a problem, at least make it books. Much healthier than most alternatives. The easy banter continued for several more minutes, and Mike found himself smiling at his phone like a teenager. Wen had simple. Text conversations started feeling like the highlight of his day. His final text to her was simple. Sweet dreams, Elizabeth. Tomorrow will be better. Her response came immediately. Already is. Good night, Mike. As he turned off the kitchen lights and headed upstairs, Mike realized Emma had been right about more than just his happiness. Something was definitely developing between him and Elizabeth, something that felt both terrifying and inevitable, like watching a sunrise you can't stop but don't really want to. Cedar Falls was quiet as he made his rounds, checking on each child one final time. Sophie had created an elaborate arrangement with her stuffed animals, including the newly named Carter Bear in a place of prominence next to Mr. Buttons. Lily slept with sheet music scattered across her bedspread, probably dreaming of next week's rescheduled music club. Danny was curled around his project poster board, even in sleep claiming ownership of tomorrow's presentation. Josh had somehow managed to build a fort using his comforter and 3 library books for architectural support. Emma's room was already dark, though he could hear her phone buzz occasionally with what was probably the teen social network that never truly slept. In his own room, Mike's thoughts settled into something approaching peace. Yes, there was the situation with Michael to navigate. Yes, Cedar Falls' gossip machine was in overdrive. Yes, the complexity of new feelings while managing 5 children seemed overwhelming most days. But there was also Elizabeth's laugh during homework help. Sophie's announcement that Miss Carter knew real dinosaur facts. Lily's excitement about music club. Emma's casual acceptance of someone new in their lives. Danny and Josh including her naturally in dinner conversation. Maybe that's how life moved forward. Not in dramatic declarations or major decisions, but in small moments that accumulated into something larger. Text conversations that stretched beyond practical logistics. Dinner guests who helped with dishes without being asked. 12-year-olds who recognized happiness in their father and gave permission for it. The snow continued to fall outside, covering Cedar Falls in pristine white. By morning, everything would look fresh and new. Yesterday's footprints erased, today's paths yet to be made. It seemed like an appropriate metaphor for whatever was developing between him and Elizabeth. Uncertain, potentially messy, but holding the promise of something beautiful. Mike's last thought before sleep was a quiet one. Whatever tomorrow brought, whatever challenges Michael's presence created, whatever complications arose from living in a town where everyone knew everything about everyone, he wasn't facing it alone anymore. And that, he realized, made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.